Hey everyone, my name is Dave Nixon and welcome to another episode of the Peak and Flow podcast. Today I'm going to go through and discuss a bit more about our level 2 retreat, but it's not really sort of designed to go through and sell our level 2 retreat. What my goal here is to help give you some breadth and some depth to the frameworks that we use on really personal development. Now, that term gets thrown around heaps. It can mean a whole range of things to a whole range of people. How I'm using the word personal development, you could imagine that it's sort of really, it's called tetra arising. It's occurring in four main areas. Our own personal subjectivity, the culture and community around us, our physical body and behaviors, and then the plan, system, and environment. Now, if we're able to take on all four of those perspectives, what's called an integral perspective, or paying attention to within those four, let's call them quadrants, because they are, it's continually arising. If we can look at personal development across those four lenses, those quadrants, then we really have this beautiful unfolding framework for personal development. It's really interesting because what commonly happens across those four quadrants, which is, personal experience is subjectivity, community culture is intersubjectivity, physical body and behavior is objective or objectivity, and then plan structures, natural environment, functional fit of things is interobjectivity. Now, commonly we have particular drivers and potentially blind spots within those four quadrants, right? And the challenge of that is that we will attempt to kind of fix our problems or solve our problems with our driver quadrant. Now, commonly the problems that are occurring are happening in an area that we're maybe not so good in. And so the whole point for us in our body of work is being able to go, how do we actually build out models and bodies of work across these four quadrants that allow people some insight, some framework, and some structure to be able to ground a lot of the subjectivity, to be able to use for going, in what areas am I missing here? Like, what am I missing fundamentally? Because that's where our potential lays. What are my strengths? Yes, and how do I leverage them? And so our ability to have this really broad yet deep approach to what our inner reality, outer reality is exceptionally profound. I've mentioned it multiple times. I feel exceptionally grateful that I get to stand on the shoulders of giants to host this type of work. Now, we do this across many things. Obviously, the podcast is an example of it. We run a free webinar every single week called Moments. You can sign up to that on our homepage. That's every Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. And so there's plenty of different ways that people can be a part of the conversation and stay a part of the conversation. Yet we also want to make sure that we're offering, and this is something that I missed out on with Mood Prep and my podcast, the 700 and something podcasts I did before. I didn't have the depth of frameworks that people could opt in to really work on themselves, or to understand the content on a deeper level and understand themselves on a deeper level. And that's what we've gone and done with Peak and Flow, is made sure that we had that to be able to then offer that for people that are wanting to walk down that path. So in saying that, our retreats are just a part of our training. We could do them in gym or online. The fact that we actually do them on location is exceptionally powerful and in person. And so that's why we run them. And so our base retreat, 2-day retreat, I've talked about that just before. Our flow retreat introduces another concept. So if you could imagine, base retreat, day 1 is physiology or body. Another term for that is actually called showing up, how we physically show up. Day 2 is psychology or mind. Another word for that would be how we actually grow up, and I mean maturing, adult development. When we look at our flow retreat, we introduce another framework which is based upon spirit. Now, spirits can be quite esoteric as a concept. It can be really quite vague depending on how we're teaching it and how we're actually connecting to it. Yet we all know that spirit exists. And so how do we actually build on our foundations of our growing up, our mind, our psychology concepts that we look at, and we use different frameworks from that, such as the Identity Compass by Arne Maus, which is profound, as it really points to the value that we hold upon our structures of thinking, right? Our thinking patterns, our cognitive intentions, they're called. We then look at spirit in the sense of going, how do we actually connect to this? What are the ways that we can connect to this in the day-to-day, in every mundane moments? And I've got a quote that I've sort of bastardized I'm going to share with you a little bit later. And I've got another one that sort of enhances or upholds the way that we approach this, because it should be a continual unfolding. These aren't just singular events. And so we then look at day 3 on that flow retreat, where we start to integrate. How do we actually integrate this all into our body all at once in any given moment, which is really our ability to stay present or be present, is to get rid of the shit that's stopping us from being present and showing up as we are today. And so that's the whole process in just a couple of minutes of how and why we structure the retreats that way. Because really, it's not just a retreat where you get to go away and relax and do that. You definitely get free time, but it's a training program. This is a personal development program that we facilitate. And we wanted to make sure that there was a tail to that. And what I mean by a tail is that the Moments webinars, that there's the ability to opt in for coaching, there's training opportunities and integration opportunities post-retreat. This is the first time I heard this quote, was actually our first retreat. And Jamie Sangster, who's one of our facilitators, phenomenal instructor. Instructor's not the right word. He's a phenomenal facilitator and space holder, especially when it comes to breath work as well. That's what he's done exceptionally well, but he's far more than that. But he used this quote. It says, "If we ignore the sacred, the mundane will crush us. If we ignore the mundane, the sacred will burn us." Now, I guess the question is, why is that beautiful? And so the beauty with these types of events and retreats and trainings, and maybe you've experienced this yourself, is that when you're there, you're like, this is amazing, this is so beautiful, how do I leverage this, how do I get the most out of this, how do I build on this? And then you go back to reality, and your reality is literally the reality that you helped shape before you went to that type of event. And so the sacred, you leave the sacred, go to the mundane, and all of a sudden the mundane starts crushing you again. But if all we ever did was the sacred stuff, if all we ever did was just chase that sacredness, we would just get burnt. We're constantly potentially looking for things outside of us, as opposed to understanding that it's in the mundane moments where we actually get to live. Because there are far more mundane moments within life, and there's a lot of beauty in the mundane. And so recently I ran a training at a real estate retreat down the coast, and there was a quote that was shared, and I'm just looking for it now. And it said, if you can't find inspiration in the mundane, you're not looking hard enough. Well, the way that I would see that is, if you can't find spirit in the mundane, you're looking too hard. The beauty of that is that in every single moment, this is literally where we get to live. And so if we're so busy constantly working for this future so that the future's better and we believe in a better future, yet we never actually live in the present, then we're never actually living anyway. It's the same as if we're always in freeze mode because of the past, and we're worried about the past repeating itself, which is getting the past projected in the future and then being anxious about the future, even though the future's not occurring and it's based upon our past experiences. Same deal. We never get to actually live in the present. And so the present's only reserved for those of us the future's only reserved for those of us that can actually live in the present. Now, it doesn't mean we shouldn't have this ability to future plan and to reflect on previous experiences and learnings. Of course it is. Is it intentional and is it conscious? And so really for us, about helping individuals leverage their potential is making sure that we're offering these frameworks where people can really opt in for themselves, as themselves, to meet themselves and move forward from there. I shared a couple of pictures of my wife and a couple of quotes, or a quote really, the other day on Instagram about love and choice-based and needs-based relationships. But I shared a quote at the end of that saying, which is one of the most profound quotes that I've heard, and I didn't understand it many years ago, but I understand it now. And the quote says, "We're all just walking each other home." What that means is that we can, if we choose, hold space so that people, and maybe we are part of that people, can actually learn to unfold and let go of the bullshit that holds them away from being here now. This is where home is. Home is always here in this moment. Now, as cliche as that sounds, or as airy-fairy as that sounds, it doesn't mean that we can't plan for the future. It doesn't mean we can't dream big. Of course we can and we should. Absolutely. That's what's driven society forward. It's what's driven and allowed me to speak into this microphone and have this sent across space and time. So yes, we absolutely should. The key thing though is what's the meaning? If all we're doing is high meaning, no action, then we're just living in dreamland, in fluffland. If all we're doing, and this is common, is just working, just doing, being a human doing, not a human being, with low meaning, we end up being a workaholic. The balance for us is finding what is meaningful that I'm willing to work for, and doing that with intention. Team, that's me done. I'm out. I guess I didn't really speak too much about the actual flow experience itself. It's a level 2 retreat. I highly encourage, if you're interested, reach out, come along to a base retreat, or at least organize some training for yourself, your team, whatever the case might be. This stuff's really powerful stuff. It's absolutely leveraged my life in more ways than I can probably explain in a 15-minute video, and many others as well. So I feel very grateful for that. Anyway, that's me done. I'm out. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you found this podcast beneficial, it would mean the world to me if you'd pass it on to someone else that you think would also find it beneficial. If you haven't already, you can grab a copy of my book, Money Yourself, online. It's all that stuff's in the show notes. Everything's in the show notes. Just check it out there. Team, I'm out. Peace and pizza. See you soon.